Now that the NFL draft is complete, I think it's fair to say the Cincinnati Bengals have failed Joe Burrow this offseason. I'll explain on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Lauren Cox. On today's episode, we're going to look at which non-Cam Ward quarterback can be the most successful. Also, we're going to talk about teams that passed the offseason so far and some teams that have failed the offseason so far. Before we dive in, do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. You can turn any TV into your Xbox, no console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. Lauren, to me, one of the teams that have completely failed the offseason so far is the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think it's punctuated by their draft, but it goes further than that overall. You look at when they signed T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, which is the number one thing that people are going to say if they push back. Like, wait a minute, they brought back Chase, they brought back Higgins. How can you say it's a complete fail? Well, here's the thing. The contract structure that they used on those players was terrible. They did not use the opportunity to maximize cap space for this season when they should be going all in with Joe Burrow and that trio under contract. Now is the time, and they didn't take advantage of that. And I would guess that it's because the owner doesn't want to pay out a bunch of cash. We could talk about structuring contracts all we want, but cash is still a thing that matters to owners. And they're like, hey, we're paying all this cash. I'm not going to give you more cash to use elsewhere, so you might as well take the high cap hit now and make it front-loaded compared to back-loaded. And when we have more cash in the future, we'll have more salary cap space. I'm sure that's the logic there. But you didn't take advantage of the opportunity to create salary cap space. You still have Trey Hendrickson's situation hanging over you and your locker room. And then they go into the draft, and they take Shedeur Sanders, who is the biggest project of the first round. They draft two linebackers in a bad linebacker class. And they take Dylan Fairchild, a guard out of Georgia, who is the lesser interior offensive lineman from that team, Tate Ratledge, coming off the board a little bit before. It's like they made a panic move, in my opinion. So whether it be the lack of significant additions in free agency and usefulness of doing those contracts and what it could give you, whether it be their approach in the draft, I just hate everything that the Bengals have done this offseason. And you want to say they're going to develop Shedeur Sanders? They didn't develop Myles Murphy. They didn't develop Dax Hill. They haven't developed DJ Turner. Like, what makes you believe that the Bengals are going to develop a high project guy? It's just a terrible offseason, in my opinion.
At least they have a new defensive coordinator to try and improve that development. But yeah, I'm with you there, right? It's a tricky spot where it's like, of course, you're glad they invested in defense and that was something that had been so neglected throughout this process. But a couple of rookie linebackers and a project defensive end doesn't necessarily feel like it makes this defense a ton better right away this year. And it's all about maximizing that window. And I can't help but be left feeling like where did they get significantly better? They retained some guys, and that's great. But like the high level improvement, it's hard to look anywhere across that roster and say, other than just like keeping Joe Burrow healthy, maybe is like that's where you can have improvement. But like that's it.
Yeah, I feel like the conversation around the Bengals and even maybe in the Bengals headquarters is like how much talent the team has. But the reality is they missed the playoffs. And like this team has not lived up to the potential that we all see at all. And listen, I'm skeptical, but I'm not the only one skeptical of the Bengals first round pick, Shedeur Sanders, either. Our guys over at Locked On Bengals talked about the reaction there.
It's a roll of the dice. There's no doubt about it. And what the Bengals are saying is that Shedeur Sanders might not have had the sacks that they or every other team is looking for out of a college prospect. But what they would probably say is if he did, then he would have been a top 8 pick. And what they've seen is he checks every box but the sack box for them. even the tackling thing, I don't think they're as worried about it as a lot of people are making it out to be. And I do think that it's an interesting point, but they're banking on the size, speed, athleticism, character, all of those things to translate. And they think he already is disruptive. They think he already will be able to hold up against the run. There's no real questions there, I think, for them. They like his versatility as well. So I don't think it's all bad. Yeah, it's a risk, but it's also the type of gamble that a lot of teams would take at 17 overall. I don't think Shedeur Stewart was going to last much longer than he did had they not taken him at 17. And so it's something we knew that they were interested in him. It's not really a surprise. I get why it's disappointing and concerning for some, but the Bengals might have also just landed an awesome player.
I guess I would just have more faith if they have developed any of their recent defensive players into anything. You could blame the coaching staff for that, but I mean, it's just hard to have faith. Another team that I want to shine a light on here, I just look at the Atlanta Falcons, and I gave them a bit of rest in yesterday's episode, but they deserve another beating, quite frankly. I just hate what the Falcons have done here, trading a 2026 first-round pick up for James Pierce after you sign Leonard Floyd to a $10 million deal in free agency, after you take Jalen Walker with your number one pick at 15. It seems like a time where you would want to build around Michael Penix, and instead they take two safeties, even though they signed Jordan Fuller and already have Jesse Bates. So you take two safeties, and then you take two edge rushers again, and it's like they panic and they double up on things, just like they did with Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix. It's like, we need a quarterback. We're going to make two decisions that just go crazy about it and see what happens. And I just think that's a terrible return on investment. To me, Lauren, it's like going to the horse races and betting on every single horse to win. It's like when you leave, you're like, yeah, I won my bet. Like, I called that horse to win. Yeah, but you bet on every horse. So it's like, we're going to go up and get two edge rushers. We're going to do this. And my guy, Aaron Freeman from Locked On Falcons, talked about that sort of vision.
I was hating on Thursday and Friday. I was like, I don't love the trade up, right? I went into this draft wanting cornerstone edge rusher, cornerstone cornerback. The Falcons were like, we're not going for the cornerback. We're going to get two edge rushers. Didn't like the trade up, but it's water under the bridge at this point. We'll see how it all plays out. At this point in time, I'm coming around, guys, to the Falcons, double dipping at edge and doubling the chances that they hit on one of these edge. And, you see the vision, right? Because it's like, this team betting on one guy, no, that's not a good bet. Betting on two guys, that becomes a better bet, given, we have a 25-year history since the last time the Falcons drafted and successfully developed an edge rusher. But for me, sort of the turning point for me was Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon. So I'm watching these safeties on Saturday. I'm like, okay. But it's like, you start to buy more into the vision of this draft, right? That, up front, secondary, those were the priorities in this draft, is what I'm getting at. And even though the Falcons didn't focus in the back end on the cornerback room, but sort of seeing the Falcons with the vision of, okay, we're going to surround Jesse Bates with playmakers.
Okay, Jesse Bates, you're better. What about your quarterback? Kyle Pitts is on the last year of his deal. That offense has not gotten to where they need to go. The offensive line has had good moments, but they took a step back last year. Again, this idea of, hey, we're just going to throw a bunch of stuff at this one spot and something has to stick. To me, it's poor process. It's a dumb man's, hey, I got to get this right. I'm just going to go crazy here. I'm going to throw everything on this, and I got to get something back. That's not good return on investment. You're going to draft two safeties and you're going to draft two edge rushers when you have Jesse Bates and you sign Jordan Fuller. It's like, you don't have unlimited resources just to throw a million things at it. You can't give 180 millions to Kirk Cousins and use a top 10 pick on a quarterback. It's just such a poor use of resources. And by the time that these things work out, imagine if the Falcons don't make the playoffs this year. And then next year, Raheem Morris goes into year 3, year 2 of Penix. He's going to be on the hot seat. He's going to have to win. They're going to be expecting the playoffs. It's year 3. It's the same thing with Arthur Smith. And you don't have a first-round pick to help improve your team because you used it on James Pierce. It's just insane to me. They've completely failed what they needed to do around Michael Penix this offseason to get him ready for year 2.
It's crazy to me that you use a first round pick on a quarterback last year and then don't draft anything on offense for him the following year until the 7th round. You get a backup offensive tackle who might not even make your 53-man roster. Like, it just feels like we're watching some quarterback development negligence happening in real time. Like,
Trading the picks.
Hindsight, they really didn't support that guy, but now we're really kind of seeing it firsthand. And then giving away that future first round pick I love James Pierce, but that's absolutely nuts to give that away at this stage of the process. They're not all in on the Super Bowl this year. Like, this is a long-term build, not a short-term build.
Yeah, it really boggles my mind. Again, it's one thing to take 2 safeties and 2 edge rushers, but to make trades up to double up on those positions, it is just purely insanity is what it is. But a team that did the total opposite of that, absolutely nailed its offseason, had the best offseason of any NFL team, period, including supporting their young quarterback in the draft properly, is the Chicago Bears. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go between dining out, online shopping, entertainment? It is easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, spending, all in one place. Stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much money I was spending on online shopping, and now I can budget smarter and save more, and I can do it without having to juggle multiple apps. Everything's in one place for me, takes away all the stress. You can take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. All right, Lauren, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about teams I think have failed the offseason so far in the Bengals and the Falcons. But now, hey, let's go to the positive, folks. Let's have some smiles and talk about the best offseason in the NFL. And I'm going to repackage this, I would imagine, at another point in the offseason when we talk about the totality of what teams have done throughout the offseason, because I just can't get over how great the Chicago Bears have handled this offseason. You look at, obviously, getting Ben Johnson, who, in my opinion, the top coaching candidate on the market, period. And then they get into the first player acquisition period of the draft. They go out and they fortify the interior of the offensive line. Okay, absolutely love what they did. They make the trades for Jonah Jackson and Joe Thuney. They go out, they signed a big deal with Drew Dolman. I even like the defensive additions on the defensive line with Dio Odengbo, who's a physical edge rusher, and Grady Jarrett, who still has a little bit in the tank as a role player, I think. Then you go into the NFL draft and weapons, help for my quarterback. You get Colston Loveland at tight end, a playmaking guy who can be a big slot, who can be a weapon with the ball in his hands. Luther Burden, what an incredible value on Luther Burden. You put him in the right environment. He can be an early slot guy, a playmaker guy, and turn into maybe one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. And Rome Odunze, DJ Moore can allow Luther Burden to grow as a route runner and grow into the player that he needs to be at the next level. And then eventually, when DJ Moore moves on and gets into his 30s, now you have Rome Odunze and Luther Burden to continue being a dynamic trio with your quarterback. Then you had Ozzie Trapillo in the second round at the end with Boston, out of Boston College, who is just one of the most safe, high-floor offensive tackles who can immediately be your top swing tackle, your backup tackle, and then eventually could be a starter for you as well. Like, I love everything the Chicago Bears have done. I'm so high on them going into the season. Lauren, as a guy who's boots on the ground in the trenches, am I overhyping your Bears, or are you with me here? Have they crushed this thing?
It's a little bit tricky because they've been off-season champions quite a few times, and regular season disappointments just as many times.
Yeah.
And
it's
so
different this time, Lauren. It's different.
Well, I've heard that one too. I do think there is something that feels a little bit different about this, and yet maybe I'm being too hyper sensitive to it. Of I still look at this team and I have some pass rush questions as far as depth behind their starters on that line, especially on the edge. It's kind of Montez Sweat and Dio Dengbo, and then last year's 5th-round pick, Austin Booker. Like, they don't really have that number 3 edge guy. They're going to try and rotate some of their smaller defensive tackles out there, like Shamar Turner and Javon Dexter might play out there. But I question a little bit how good this pass rush will be. And then even the improvements on the offensive line, great starting 5 when healthy. But Drew Dahlman has dealt with ankle injuries the last 2 seasons. Jonah Jackson has been hurt the last few seasons. Tooney is a rock star and an Iron Man there, but I just have a feeling we're not going to see a fully healthy offensive line for the entirety of the season. So the interior depth there is maybe lacking a little bit. I could just see ways where normal ebbs and flows of a season, an injury here, an injury there, and all of a sudden really critical key spots on the O-line and D-line are thinner, and the depth there I'd like to be stronger, but there's still some offseason left to address that.
Yeah, you could still add value. There are guys who are going to be cut from other teams that have surplus and things like that. But listen, overall, Lauren, in your heart, in your heart of hearts, the Bears have done literally everything possible they can to give this team a chance to succeed this year. They add a ton on offensive line. They add more weapons. They add depth with young players. Like, I like Shamar Turner in the middle rounds as well as kind of an inside. He can be like a DeMarcus Walker replacement, in my opinion. He gives you that similar inside-outside versatility. He's kind of a tweener guy. So I guess it's fair to protect your heart. As someone close to the situation, I would do the same thing with the Titans. But I just think the Bears have been incredible this year, and I'm going to have some wild hot takes about the Bears as we progress throughout the offseason. But I do want to give you a moment. Is there a team out there that you think was a major pass so far? I got another one, but, I've been giving them too much shine. I got people calling me a Giants fan in the comments now.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants are one of those teams it's tricky because they had so much to do. Like, they did a lot, but there was so much to do that they can't do everything. And so, like, everything they've done, I've generally liked, but I still look at the Giants team and I'm like, man, I still have some question marks there, not because for lack of trying, but just because there's so much you have to be able to do in any one individual offseason that you can't fill all of those holes all at the same time here. But it's not like there's another team that's like, wow, they have filled all these holes and now they're ready to take that big step forward. I mean, I think a couple of the teams that were already good did a good job of staying good. I think the Washington Commanders, for example, are a team that, like, it's not like, oh, well, they made some big offseason leap that's going to take them to the next level, but it's like, no, they did a good job of adding talent and sustaining what they were building in the back end. But that's not as, like, sexy and exciting as a team like the Bears or the Giants that was bad last season, and now they make a big improvement, and you're looking to see, can they make a big leap this season for a team that was already good, like the Commanders, that stayed good with what they've done.
Yeah, no, I do agree. I guess I'm grading on a curve. Obviously, it's different. Like, I think the Bears are in a different place than the Giants, but I just look at what their offseason goals were overall, and they wanted to get a franchise quarterback to build on, and whether Jackson Dart becomes that or not, like, obviously I'm not saying he will, and that's why I'm saying that they did well. I'm just saying their goals this offseason were to get better and get a quarterback to build around and get a quarterback that can win now. And they have Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston. They doubled down on that. Both guys who are good in the locker room and good for a young quarterback. It's crazy. Jackson Dart actually said he wanted to work with Jameis Winston before he was even drafted to the Giants. So I thought that was very interesting. But whether you believe in Jackson Dart or not, to me, is not important. What's important is the Giants found a way to get what might be the most talented player in the entire draft in Abdul Carter, my number one player in the draft, and get their long-term franchise quarterback, again, whether it works out or not. And you get stability with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston in your quarterback room so that no matter what, even with injury, you have a veteran quarterback. I thought they already had some pretty good stuff on the roster as well. So add in Javon Holland in free agency, who I really, really liked. I think that's a good replacement for Xavier McKinney after I think it was a mistake letting him go. The Giants, I'm grading on a curve. I'm not saying the Giants are going to take some big leap this year and be an incredible playoff team or anything like that, but I think for what their goals were this offseason, they hit them about as well as they possibly could.
See, I'm yes, the quarterback is huge, and some of the big, like, they've made good moves, right? It's not about what they've done being not good moves, but I still look at the roster and I'm like, well, I don't love the weapons not named Malik Neighbors at that point, which, again, you can't fix it all at once, but, like, I'd like to give a young quarterback or Russell Wilson or whoever more of an option there. I'd like to improve the backfield more than just Tyrone Tracy, and they drafted Cam Skedabo in the 4th round, like,
yeah,
back there, but do they have a dynamic rushing attack right now? I'm not so sure. And then the offensive line, like, they kept everybody around and brought them back, but I thought it was average kind of group, especially on the interior there. Like you would have liked to add weapons and add pass rush and add quarterback, but you just can't do all of that all at once. So it's like, yes, you did a good job, but you went from 0 to 4, but we still want to see up at like the 6 or the 8 or the 10, and there's still a ways to go before they're like a talented contending team in my eyes.
I have a trade. Kayvon Thibodeau for George Pickens.
For a second, I thought you were just reading that loud. You're throwing that out there as a hypothetical.
Oh, yes, correct. No, this is not breaking news, although that would be cool if something like that were to happen to me. But no, George Pickens, last year of his deal, they just got DK Metcalf, similar players. And then Kayvon Thibodeau, last year of his deal, pass rusher, Steelers could be not paying TJ Watt. I mean, what's going on there? Maybe give him a look. I don't know. It seems like two guys that neither team really wants to pay. Maybe switch and see what happens. But with that being said, we talked about Jackson Dart being the quarterback of the Giants. Will he be the most successful non-Cam Ward quarterback? We will discuss. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action right now. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you're going to get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, even after the game tips off, you can combine live bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets. Once again, head to FanDuel.com to claim your $250 in bonus bets today. All right, Lauren, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about the pass and fails so far throughout the offseason, including the NFL draft. But now I want to kind of zoom in to these quarterbacks. Obviously, Cam Ward goes number one overall. Kind of going to put him in a separate tier. He seems like he's in a different situation. Probably going to get to start day one and might be different than all the other quarterbacks out there, like a Jackson Dart with the New York Giants and Tyler Shook with the New Orleans Saints and Jalen Milroe with the Seattle Seahawks. And then Shedeur Sanders with the Cleveland Browns, even throw Will Howard in there as well, I guess, with the Pittsburgh Steelers. If they don't sign Aaron Rodgers for some reason, Will Howard might as well start him over Mason Rudolph. What are we doing there? So out of all of those quarterbacks that aren't Cam Ward that got taken, even you could go off the board, Dylan Gabriel for the Browns. Should have thrown that in there, right? Which of those quarterbacks do you think ends up being the most successful?
Different ways to define success. But I think the quarterback who I think is in the best landing spot, just in terms of like the infrastructure to help a quarterback here that could take the field. Like, I don't know if this means like success. I don't know if he's going to win a lot of games this season, but I like where Tyler Shough is in New Orleans. Like, I think about giving a young quarterback some offensive line consistency and some weapons to throw to, and an offensive coordinator who at least knows a little bit of what he's doing. I mean, we'll kind of see how good of a job Kellen Moore and Brandon Staley do in New Orleans. But I look at that Saints offensive line, and you got 5 first-round picks across the board. They just got another one in Calvin Banks there. They'll figure out the exact order of who's at tackle and who's at guard. But then you got, Alvin Kamara, and they added Devin Neal in the backfield. They've got somewhat of a running game there. They've got tight ends out the wazoo to help be a quarterback's best friend and the little security blanket. Chris Olave coming back healthy. They added Brandon Cooks as a much older receiver at this point. But I feel like there's enough there that a young quarterback can come in and have the tools around him to put him in the best position to be successful. Like, personally, I don't necessarily know that Shough is the quarterback that I'm like most fired up about as a prospect landing with the Saints in that spot. But I think as far as a landing spot goes where any quarterback can really succeed, that to me has the kind of personnel around him that I feel like this is a good spot for a quarterback to have as easy a time as you can transitioning to the NFL.
No, I'm with you there. They do have a good infrastructure, and if Kellen Moore is who he's supposed to be, that should help him out a lot. I look around and honestly, if we're talking about who will get the opportunity to play first, it's funny to me that Shook and or Shuck, whatever, spell your name the way that it's pronounced. I hate people who do stuff like that. SHOUGH, supposed to be Shook or what are we doing here? Anyways, moving right along for an old man in a cloud for too long. Will Howard might have the best chance to play early, like as things stand. Like I said, if Rodgers just decides he wants to retire. But if I'm going to pick one of these, I'm really going to pick Jalen Milroe for the Seahawks. I just trust the Seahawks organization. I trust Mike McDonald. I think that the Seahawks are building a pretty good offensive line and still under construction. But I think by the time that Milroe plays, which is probably next year, maybe even the year after that, if they roll Darnold back again, I think that Seattle will build a good roster and they'll take care of Jalen Milroe and they'll support him in a way that will get the best out of him. So whether or not he is good enough to be the best quarterback of this group of guys that we're talking about, I can't know for certain, but I trust Seattle's process more than I think I trust any of the other teams involved. And like the longevity of the coaching staff and the stability. So I'll go with Jalen Milroe, but neither of us pick Shedeur Sanders. And obviously, I am personally trying to limit the Shedeur Sanders talk throughout we talked so much about him, but I had to bring him up here and we'll talk about him to close it out. But I want to swing it to our guys over at Locked On NFL Draft, Keith Sanchez, who talked about the slide from Sanders.
I think about the Saints taking Tyler Shough, right, and getting back up to get him in the second round. I even think about the Giants drafting Jackson Dart, who I've been on this podcast saying that I think Jackson Dart is a talented quarterback. And then I think about all the guys that were taken in between, even the Jalen Milroes. It's very like I don't know how somebody can put together the compelling case that all of those guys are rounds ahead better than Shedeur Sanders, right? Because taking a first-round guy and taking a fifth-round guy, that's you're really close to just taking a flyer on him, right? At the end of the day. Even taking Dylan Gabriel at pick 94, was it? And then Shedeur Sanders goes pick almost probably 100 picks later. There's no way that you watch all of those guys back-to-back and then say, yep, Shedeur is light years behind Dylan Gabriel. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
I mean, I'm with him there, but neither of us picked Shedeur Sanders. So why did you not pick Shedeur Sanders for this award?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I haven't heard many people talk about, and I guess maybe I've intentionally tuned out some of the Shedeur discourse at this point, is like, you have, the people that say when you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one, but when you have five quarterbacks in the Cleveland Browns quarterback room, there are not enough practice reps to go around for those quarterbacks. Like, you can barely get enough for two quarterbacks, your starter and your backup. But like most of the time in OTAs and certainly training camp, like your number three quarterback isn't getting a ton of meaningful reps at practice. And so when you have five quarterbacks there, how you evaluate them and give everybody reps, like somebody's got to be the starter, somebody's going to be the backup. And I don't think Shedeur Sanders is going to come in day one getting those reps automatically out of the gate. He could earn them, but how do you have five quarterbacks really in a true quarterback battle? Or if Watson's injured and not going to participate, even four, number four quarterback in that rotation is not going to get much time. Number three doesn't get that much time. So I just don't think it's a good system to have that many quarterbacks that you're all trying to seriously evaluate and see who's going to be the starter. Like somebody's got to go to give Shedeur even the opportunity just to have the reps to compete and show that he could be the starter.
That's the question, right? I think that Watson will be on IR all season. I know that that's not like confirmed, but I'm just convinced like you don't tear your Achilles and then re-tear it 6 months later and then come back and play football. Like he's not playing this year in my opinion. So that solves number 5, but you're right. You have Dylan Gabriel, rookie contract, 3rd round rookie contract. Like it's not super expensive like a first round, but it ain't cheap. That's a 3rd round contract. And then you have Sanders, who are you just going to end up cutting him? That would be, you traded 2 picks to go up and get him. You're going to cut him and go through that fiasco. And you don't want the media attention. And then you do that, and then it creates all those questions. And then you have Flacco, who I guess you can move on, but why would you waste Joe Flacco's time like that? I feel like that wouldn't be taken well by a respected veteran. And then Kenny Pickett, he didn't come there to make friends. So, it's just like you're not going to keep 4 quarterbacks on your roster. Most teams don't even keep 3. It's insane is what it is, really. But I think with all of that, and then the way that it happened, I guess I just worry whether Shedeur can recover from it, period, man. It's such an embarrassing, the prank call and the drop and how much attention. I mean, literally the first overall pick's getting taken and Cam Ward went to the Titans, number 1 overall. Anyways, Shedeur Sanders, is he going to drop? Is he a terrible person? What are we doing? So just all of it, it's just a lot for a guy who already isn't like, he's not like a super ultra talented guy. It was going to be an uphill battle for him to be one of the better quarterbacks in the league anyways. I just wonder if he can recover from all of that anyway, with all of it. Like, it's just going to be all so difficult to do that.
And not to mention just like the general circus of the Cleveland Browns with Deshaun Watson. Like,
yes,
of all the places to go, like you could make a pretty strong argument, the receivers they have there and the line they have there and the defense, like it could be a good landing spot for a quarterback, but like not everything else. Like if you just put the roster on paper, good landing spot. Everything else organizationally, it's just like, man, I you feel bad for him beyond just everything that happened in the draft. It's like not only the whole draft drama, and then you finally land, Cleveland Browns. It's like, geez, like, okay, it's better than going undrafted, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, if you could think of a historically worse place for a quarterback to go to hope to be successful, there is none.
Chicago Bears, maybe pretty darn close.
I mean, pretty darn close, but you don't win. Like, I mean, I guess if you want to go back to like Otto Graham back in the 50s, you could be like, wait, like, the Bears had Jim McMahon and they won the Super Bowl in 85, but the Browns back in the 50s, Otto Graham. If you're a younger person, you don't know about Otto Graham, go check him out. He was a GOAT back in the 50s. Listen, I'm telling you, that was when the Browns were king. But since the Browns came back to the NFL, there is not like even Rex Grossman went to a Super Bowl with the Bears. Like the Browns got nothing. So very close. I get your pain and suffering. The Titans are in that conversation as well. But yeah, nothing as bad as the Browns in quarterback. So we talked about his drop and situation, the roster, and then we finally get to what might be the hardest thing to overcome, and that's just the Browns' general dysfunction.
You can't have the Warren Moon Oilers discourse around your Titans with and try and play this bad quarterback game with me, sir.
Okay, that's fair, but I guess I was thinking the Tennessee Titans, and Steve McNair goes to a Super Bowl pretty good, but other than that, it's been, other
than these Hall of Fame caliber guys, hasn't been that great. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I mean, listen, Warren Moon, Hall of Fame. I never got to see him play though. Let's be honest about that. Stopped playing for the Titans in '93. So, never on the Titans to me, but I get it. I understand. He said something very similar to that, quite honestly, though, but that's a conversation for another day. But either way, that's going to do it. That's our fails, our passes, what we think of this quarterback class. Going to be back with you guys tomorrow, but that's going to do it for me today. I am your host, the Madman, Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, Lauren Cox. As I tell you every episode, thanks for tuning in and stay safe out there.